So my friends, in this video we're going to meet the Motorola G7 family. We'll take a closer look at all of them. And we're going to be discussing the Motorola Razr. Is it actually happening, and is it going to look anything like this? Let's dig in and find out more. So my friends, this is the range of G7, the family of G7, and it's a pretty impressive budget range of smartphones. You start on the left with the G7 Play, and then you have the standard G7, the G7 Power, and then the G7 Plus. Now, the Play comes in at just £129 in the UK. The G7 Power is the next most expensive at £179. Then you have the G7 at £219, and then finally you have the flagship model, which is the G7 Plus, and that starts at around £330. Now, there are some things that all four of these phones share, fast charging being one of them, but there is no wireless charging on any of them. All of these phones are splash resistant but not waterproof, and they all have a micro SD card slot for expanding the memory, and they all do have a 3.5mm headphone jack. And they all have fingerprint unlock sensors on the rear. Okay my friends, like any normal person, I'm going to start at the top and then work my way down. This is the G7 Plus, it's the flagship model in the range, and as with the G7 and the G7 Power, it comes with a silicone case already included, which is a nice and unexpected touch. The phone itself is really smart looking. In fact, it's far more premium than the price point suggests, and that transfers to every phone in the range. I've been absolutely blown away by the quality. Now, I'm not saying that this, the G7 Plus, is the one that you ought to buy, because I'm actually edging towards the G7. I'll come on to that in just a second, the reasons. We will be doing a full camera review in a separate video about all four of these phones, but this just gives you an indication of the type of quality that you can expect, and I think it looks pretty good for a budget phone. So with the flagship model, a few of the specs are exactly the same as the G7. The 6.2-inch screen, the resolution at 2270 by 1080, and also the battery, both having 3000 mAh batteries fitted. Now where there are some differences are the cameras. This has a rear 16 megapixel 1.7 aperture and a 5 megapixel 2.2 aperture, and on the front there's a 12 megapixel front-facing camera, whereas you don't get such good cameras on the G7. This also has the Snapdragon 636 processor and also an Android Pie operating system. This is the G7. Now I believe this will be the choice for most people. It just feels that this is the right balance of value for money in terms of the price that you're paying and the spec that you're getting. So many of the features in this phone are identical to the G7 Plus. You get the same operating system, it's the same size, the same resolution, the same storage, the same RAM, it even has the same 3000 mAh battery. But there are a few subtle changes. And when we say subtle, we mean subtle. It's slightly slower with a 632 Snapdragon CPU, and the cameras are slightly more inefficient. A 12 megapixel front facing and an 8 megapixel rear facing. That's about it. Side by side, they're almost identical. The notch on the front is the same, and they look almost identical from the rear. So this is really down to you guys, but I think the G7 is definitely the one which is the best value for money. Now on to the G7 Power. So if the G7 and the G7 Plus were mum and dad, then the G7 Power is probably your big brother. And as the name suggests, it comes with more power, a 5000 mAh battery built in. It runs the same processor, the Snapdragon 632, as the G7, but the screen, although the same size at 6.2 inches, it is slightly inferior at 1570 by 720. Now, one thing that you'll notice as well straight away is that notch is definitely a lot bigger. This does come with 3 or 4 GB of RAM and storage options of 32 GB or 64 GB. Now the cameras are also very different. There's just one rear facing, which is a 12 megapixel 2.0 aperture, and a front facing 8 megapixel 2.2. So these are still decent specs, and the value is still there at just £179. So we've reached the baby of the family. This is the G7 Play, but my friends, this is far more than just a baby phone. This has got some great specs too. Now, this retails in the UK for just £129, and so therefore you wouldn't expect too much. But it still has that same Snapdragon 632 processor, it still has a 3000 mAh battery, there's a resolution of 1512 by 720 pixels, and that screen size is 5.7 inches. It still also runs Android 9.0 Pie. Now, in terms of cameras, on the rear you have a 13 megapixel f2.0, and on the front you have an 8 megapixel 2.2. So this doesn't cost you very much at all, but it gives excellent battery life. So this is also maybe slightly uglier than the others. It doesn't look as good as any of the others. It's got a bigger notch and bigger bezels, but on the positive side, it is a lot lighter at 149 grams, and it's a smaller in size, and so therefore if you're looking for more of a compact phone, it's the one to go for. So this is the G7 family, and I've been really impressed with how great these budget phones are, and I like the fact that each one of these has got a purpose, has got a market, and there's going to be a buyer out there for it. So which one do you like, guys? Let me know in the comments. Do you want any of them, or are you going to leave it? Right, let's talk about the Moto, Razr, and what may be coming very soon. Now, the Motorola range of Razr phones from the early 2000s were iconic, and in fact they've probably aged better than any phone of that generation. They still look good today. So the thought of getting an updated 2019 version with a folding screen is definitely something that will excite most people. Now, this may all just be rumour and conjecture, but the latest rumours is that this will be a 6.2 inch folding screen. Just imagine how small that's going to get when folded. So if we can overcome the issues that Samsung have had, then this is going to be something special. But what about the specs? Well, maybe not so special. This is what the latest rumours are suggesting. So as well as a brand new logo, they're going to have a Snapdragon 710 CPU. It will run Android Pie operating system, have a 12 megapixel rear and 8 megapixel front camera. The disappointing but very understandable thing is the battery at 2730 mAh and that foldable screen of 6.18 inches. It will go up to 256 gigabytes and have 4 or 6 gig of RAM. It will be dual SIM, but it comes in at a hefty price, my friends, $1,500. What's your thoughts? So remember to check out the links in the description for more information on this, the G7 family, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. And also let me know whether you think $1,500 will be too much for that very sexy looking Razr phone. Guys, thanks for watching this video as always. If it's been helpful to you, hit that like button, and also if you're not already, make sure you subscribe. I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Have a great day.